So
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we'll get into it. What is it now? Season 2, episode 4 of the Over the Hill podcast
yeah,
with my special guest today, the one and only UK garage legend, pirate radio legend, big man in the game, man like Spinny V, bruv. Welcome to the show
thank
officially.
you,
And
thank
yeah,
you,
I was kind of on your case during the first season, and obviously I had to take a little break and whatnot. But yeah, welcome to season 2. How's life treating you, man?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. It's been, we just said just quickly there, just as we said hello, it's been hard to get the time together. But yeah, not only have you been on my case, I quickly showed you my reminder, didn't I? I had it in there like ready. So it's been on my mind. So I'm glad we got to get a date in and get it done because yeah, I've wanted to be on. I've seen a few of the other ones as well. They're quite interesting and
Yeah.
good insight into people's lives. So yeah, I'm happy to be on it, mate. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, on the other podcast, you are always a name that comes up, especially among like West London circles and pirate radio circles. Everyone knows your name. Infamous throughout the scene. But I know you got started at a super young age, and it's a story that we told back on episode 7 of season 1. Ricky D was saying that you used to come basically after school to come to
Yeah,
ISFM.
yeah.
How did you get into the game, and what was those early days of doing radio like for you at such a young age?
So for me, it was like kind of under 18 events. I went to a few under 18 events. I've always loved music anyway, but obviously you don't really know the DJing side of it. So I think a few under 18 events you just kind of got to see. I remember one under 18 event, the DJ used to bring like a little part of a tune in. And I don't think it even think it was on time, but it was just that little part of the tune. Everyone went mad for it. I just kind of like that kind of concept. And then just found an interest. And then like some friends in my local area, I was speaking to them about it. And he said to me that a guy that lives on my road, he goes to school with him and he's got decks. So I kind of met up with him and spoke about getting decks, started off with the basics, the SoundLab belt drives that, a lot of DJs will probably know about and the struggle using them. But I mean, at the time, you're in your element. It was great. You could just mix in your room. And then going on from there, it was just kind of like a hobby, obviously, and having fun. But it just seemed to progress. And I think being young, I was like 12 when I got the decks. And then kind of still learning to mix. I think probably still learning to mix kind of on radio, to be honest, because I didn't have 1210s when I got on ice with Ricky and the guys. So I caught a little bit of Ricky's podcast as well, actually, and heard a few of his little stories on there. And yeah, it's great to be part of stories like that because Ricky D for me was, when you're in school and just coming up. So yeah, it's great to hear from them kind of guys. So I think I just went from the under 18 events to starting mixing. Try not to skip any of the story. Started off like doing little local events, and one of the guys that does them, whose equipment it was, and does the main part of the like DJing and the parties, he had a little station that he played on called Avenues FM. It was like local to us. And me, not being the best at getting up for school, I used to get up before school to go and do the radio show. So I knew it was a passion. I knew it was like I was keen to do it, getting up that early, going to radio, then going to school, and that followed on then through from ice. So I got a job in Baseline Records, which was in Kilburn High Road. And I used to go after school, like get the bus from school straight to the record shop. And that's how I got to meet some of the ISFM guys. Because obviously to me, they were like celebrities. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like that's the thing with radio DJs is like during that period anyway, not so much nowadays, but your local pirate DJs. Like I remember we used to go into school the next day, and it's funny you talk about DJing before school. We used
Yeah.
to listen to whoever was on Delight or Flex or Flight or whatever in the morning, and we'd come in and we'd be like, "Right, did you hear that show this morning? Or did you listen to?" At the time, I think it was Nicky S and Nike were just making it big
Yeah.
on Delight. We were like, "Right, did anyone listen to Delight yesterday? Or anyone listen to So Solid Sundays?" Like it was like a big thing. So yeah, when you meet these guys up close and personal, and and you are 13, 14 years old, it is a big deal, bruv.
Massive. It's massive. So, I think at the time Dodger was working in there. He used to do like Saturday 6 to 8, which was quite a prime time. But I got to meet like Chunky, who ended up being part of Sunship, and he was already big then at the time, like his name. So like with the pirate radio thing, it kind of went in areas because of where you broadcasted. But ISFM was quite a big area that it covered, but it covered my area that I lived in, which was great. So I used to just go in that record shop nearly every day after school. And Vince that owned it, I think some days he was like, mate, you was here yesterday. Like we had a delivery yesterday, so you know what's in. And then I'd go in some Saturdays and it'd be busier. People would be bringing in tapes from Pirate Radio. They'd record the sets and say, what's this track? And they'd be like listening. I was always at the end of the counter, just down the other end, and just kind of just knew a lot of the names. So he kind of joked. He's like, we may as well give you a job. And I was kind of like, yes, you could do, So he's like, I'll have to look at it because you're young. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I got a job in there that helped me get my records. you know, and things like that, and meet the people that I did. So I remember it was Mr. Reds, and he was in the store, and he was like, at this point, radio was running from 6 p.m. on a Friday evening to like Sunday midnight. It wasn't 7 days a week. So like on a Sunday, they used to do like live calls and stuff, like Ricky D and I think Dom the Bomb Show it was. So with them hours, you know, I think he was looking for like graveyard shifts. But when Mr. Red said it to me, I was like jumping on it straight away. I was 13, been in the record shop a little while, had done a few little things, but no real big events or nothing like that at that time. But just kind of little local things. And I don't think I was even great. And like I said, I didn't have Technique 1210. So mixing on them is like, for me, it's probably like driving a lorry compared to a, you know what I mean, a car, because they're so strong and powerful and you're not used to it. So I went to the phone box outside the record shop and called Ricky D. He was like, "How old are you, mate?" And I was like, 13. He was like, "Oh my God." He's like, "I don't know if I can give you like a 2 till 4 a.m. or something like that." He's like, "I'll have to look at it, maybe even a 10 till 12, because obviously everyone going out, it was then Friday 6 p.m. onwards, but it wouldn't start till like midday. So I was given 10 till 12 on a Saturday morning, which, to be honest, I think a lot of people thought like no one's going to listen. But I went there. I remember my mum taking me there, and it was in Fulham at the time, and just going in. And obviously everyone in that house was probably really tired as well. So I was just kind of in this little room on my own mixing. I was like, it was like a good experience, but I was nervous as hell. I didn't want to pick up the mic. I didn't want to answer the phones. Do you know what I mean? But it was getting busier and busier. And then it wasn't too long until the guys that I kind of listened to and was kind of looking up to, like Danger K, I kind of somehow met him and asked him to come on my show. And that was a weekly thing. And it just really took off from there, to be honest.
Yeah, man, it's it's mad hearing that people thinking that a Saturday 10 till 12 wouldn't be a good show. In all honesty, like people, if you're out and about doing your shopping and out or you're driving wherever, like, bruv, radio is popping on a Saturday daytime as well. Don't ever get it twisted. So it's not a bad place to start. It is a little bit better than a 2 till 4 a.m. because bloody
I
hell,
would have took any time, to be honest. I probably would have took 4 till 6 or 6 to 8. But I think people kind of said to me like 10 till 12. I think because it was the standard that at 12, people were kind of starting to get up and get about, probably because from a Friday night raving, that was probably your audience, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how it started. I remember even on the second week, you know, just being a bit nervous, thinking, is this my fixed set or not?
Yeah.
You know, kind of speaking to Ricky. And Ricky was great. He was a good guy to you know, work with. And it just went on from there. And then I think I upgraded to some different sets from there as well.
As well as upgrading, how long did it take you? You mentioned getting used to Technics. How long did it take you? Because I remember using bloody old Gemini XL 100s or whatever they were. The
They were
belt
similar,
drives,
weren't they? They were kind of like
I actually think Citronic, Gemini, Cam. I think they were all pretty much the same company with different labels on them.
Yeah, I got a set of cams after the SoundLab belt drives, and they were direct drives, but one was faulty, so it's like you had to give it like a little push start. So that was hard to mix with. But I can't remember how long. But you know, doing radio was like practice sessions. Plus, the friend that I was introduced to, someone said he lived on my road. He lived bang opposite me, and I remember when he had SoundLab direct drives at the time, which were even better than mine.
Yeah,
and he could mix. You know, he could mix well, and I was like doing all the tricks of bringing it in on the interlude and, you know, any bit where the beats weren't going to clash, and still kind of doing that and making tapes with friends. You know, a few of my friends, I think they still got tapes of us like messing around, and that was kind of a weekly thing. People would come to my house and we'd just have a mix, and some people jump on the mic, and, you know, making a tape. I don't know if you probably know yourself, Jay, like as a DJ, making a tape was like, it was like a night out back then when it's like, well, should we make a tape? So yeah, we used to like make tapes and just have fun. So
it's like a social event, mate. Making a tape, you'd be like, "Oh, what's coming to my house on Friday? Let's put a tape together." We had one geezer that we used to hang around with, and I won't say his name, but his initials were MC. And he come around one night, and he wasn't a DJ or anything like that. He actually ended up being a singer. But anyway, his initials were MC, and he come around one night, and me and my boy Pure Cut were making a tape, and he picked up the mic. This Donny, for the life of me, I'll never forget this in my life. I must have been about 15, 16, and he just picked up the mic and he went, "Yo, it's MC squared," and I was like, what are you talking about? He went MC, and I was like, Jesus Christ. Little memories like that always stick in my mind from them nights of just going around the yard and just putting a tape together and then taking it to a house party and playing it. Bro, if we thought we were the bollocks, everyone always thought they were the bollocks, but them tapes, if you listen to them nowadays,
yeah, some of my tapes from radio are probably kind of cringe. You always feel like you're getting better, don't you? Like, so
yeah.
But yeah, it took me a little while. It did take me a little while to get used to them techniques, because they're strong, powerful. Because I used to like mix by touching the platter a lot, and then I kind of learned to kind of pitch control mix. which you could do on Techniques. You couldn't really do that on other decks because it would just
Yeah.
go, ooh, like the whole sound would go off. But yeah, they're the memories, like you say, they're my. That's why when we started, I said I don't want to skip any parts of the story, so I might go back on some things and have memory. But like record shopping trips on a Saturday were great. Even though I worked at Baseline, different shops had links to different like record companies or producers that brought stuff in. So you're on the bus or you're on the train, you're going into the West End and Black Market, Uptown, some of the other little ones, Rhythm Division, um, Release the Groove. Yeah, so different record shops I used to pop into. But being in Baseline was a real great opportunity for me to meet these people like Mr. Reds, who you know, me listening to him on Nice, to meet him alone, never mind him speak to me and try and get me onto the radio was great. Dodger, Chunky, Double O ended up getting a job there. You know, I used to listen to Double O and Sharky on a Sunday before I had the pleasure of meeting them properly, you know, and Danger as well. So having Danger K on my set. And then I went on to do shows like with MC Bigger. I think he was on after me originally with someone. And then he started coming on my show and we done a lot together. So I think we moved to 12 till 2 then. So a little bit extra sleep, but on a Saturday afternoon. But yeah, it took me a little while with the Techniques, but loads of making tapes and getting used to it. I think it was Vince in the record shop that ended up saying to my mum, I can get him some Techniques, you know, for a certain price, and they weren't cheap. Yeah. So yeah, thanks to Mumsy for that. She got that for me, and yeah, you can practice better then. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, once you actually start getting used to anything, and it's literally like riding a bike. I mean, I haven't mixed vinyl properly for years, but I guarantee if I turn on a set of decks within 10 minutes, I'll be back in it. Like it's not,
Yeah.
I barely mix anything anymore, bro. Let alone vinyl. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's literally like, well, you go, oh yeah, this feels familiar, bang, and you're straight back into it. But to actually get there, like it's literally practice hours, isn't it? So,
yeah.
So in terms of obviously ISFM, massive station. You know, anyone who wants to hear the full history of it, do go back and listen to the episode of Ricky D, because it's a fascinating episode. You know, ran for quite a few years, and obviously in that time, I mean, you kind of would have grown up on that station and you know, turned into an adult during that time. What was that experience like, you know, in terms of being able to start going to proper events as well, you know, when you finally turn 18, and at this point, obviously you've already got a name at that point. What was the transition like from being like, fucking hell, this is actually like an adult club now? Can you remember the first time walking into a proper legit rave?
Yeah, so one of the main ones for me, so the first one I'd done was a guy called Sean Nami D. He was an MC, and he was doing an event at the Rock Cafe, which was part of Eden Boulevard. And so I think he said like, you'll put me in room 2, and I still couldn't mix great at the time, but I remember the room just filling up, and I think I was just selecting the right tracks, and hopefully no one was noticing the mixing. But yeah, it was just a great buzz for me. So that was one of the first ones. That was an over 18. But starting out, it was like I was going to clubs just before I kind of got into DJing. So with that time frame of getting into garage and realizing someone on my road had decks and speaking to them and just getting on it, I used to go to some events, you know, with older friends. So a lot of my friends were out, so it was just trying my luck. Massive shirt on, you know, just probably a fake ID, fake and was it the NUS cards, the student kind of card? Fake one of them. I actually saw a bouncer years later, and he said to me that we would try and just let you, like, they kind of knew, I think it was this, but my mates with this guy, I'd say, look, you know, if I didn't get in, they were cool. I just said, like, you lot go in and try my luck. But I remember getting into Bagley's for the first time, and it was great because someone in front of me had got turned away, and he was tall and big, and I was always little, so I was like, oh, no chance. And then I remember just getting in, and my mate like nudging me, and my other mate then coming over and going, yes, like, you're in, sort of thing. And that was a great experience. But I had a few under 18 raves. I went under 18 raves that I started playing at, but I had a few over 18 rave experiences just from partying and enjoying that buzz. If not, it was like tape packs for me, you know. So you listen to tape packs and you'd hear DJs and the atmosphere and the MCs, and never really, they were untouchable to, you know, you don't get to see them for me because I couldn't go raving. But once I did go to a few places like Bagley's, I remember going to Coup Club, and that was one of my first main experiences of hearing an MC, and it was MC Creed. And I was like, wow, what is that? So I kind of come forward and looked, and Carl Toughnut Brown was on the decks. So one of my favorite DJs, because just his old aura and the way he mixes, and he's waving the vinyl and he was moving around. I was like, it was amazing. It kind of inspired me, you know, as well as hearing the other DJs before that wasn't garage to make me want to mix. That was a big point for me in the garage kind of scene to want to do more. Yeah. And then, a few more events. And then I started off mainly on under 18 events, obviously because of my age, and I think it was a good gimmick as well. It got me more bookings because obviously being a young DJ, although there was a few at the time, I think being on ice helped me, obviously. Do you know what I mean? Working in a record shop, they're the kind of things before we had social media. they're kind of the things that, you know, you need. Pirate radio, because people can call in and kind of interact with you that way. If you're not on flyers, it's good to be on radio. And radio wasn't as busy then as it is now. I say not as busy, but you didn't have as many stations or as many.
Yeah.
Like now you've got a lot of internet stations. Then it was just kind of like Ice, Mac FM, Freak FM, Deja Vu, and so on, Passion. So many stations, but in different areas. So yeah, being on Ice, I think, helped me a lot. And I've done a lot of the under 18s like Rhythm Nation, Education in Dance, and Detention. There was quite a lot. And then I remember sitting in a friend's house, and you know, the adverts were every 2 hours on pirate radio then.
Yep.
And I was convinced I heard my name. My mate said, I think I heard your name as well. But it was for like a rave that was run by Martin Lana, who done Liberty. But it wasn't Liberty. It was like, I think it might have been at Shoeless Joe's in Chelsea, which is quite a small bar, but you know, there's like Pied Piper, EZ, names like that on it. I was like, I'm sure it's mine. So I had to wait 2 hours to listen to these adverts again. And so be it, it was my name. So I was like, oh, well, who do I contact? So I got in contact with Martin about it. And then he asked me to come in for a meeting at Coliseum, which I went to straight after school in my uniform. So I met him at the office at Coliseum. He's like, I really want to get you in playing here, but obviously with your age, we have to look at things. I was like 13, maybe 14 when I started at Liberty. And I was like, I would do anything to get in there. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, we'll sort it out whatever way. Do you know what I mean? If they had to speak to my mum or not. But I think there's a thing where we just done it kind of, not backdoor, but I remember the bouncers laughing at me, turning up for my first Liberty. Yeah, about 6 of these bouncers just like laughing, kind of like, who's this guy sort of thing. But yeah, I kind of played there as a resident, like a monthly resident. So I was there regular, sometimes even weekly, you know what I mean? Like, and playing at Liberty. So that was, the experience was crazy. I think Coliseum was one of my main, apart from the Rock Cap, which was one of the first ones, playing at Coliseum was like a crazy experience, because that's where all the tape packs has come from that I'd listened to. Do you know what I mean?
It's interesting to talk about the tape packs as well. Just going back to something you touched on with pirate radio back then, literally, it wasn't like, it's mad because we're spoiled for choice nowadays. Like you say, we've got all these internet stations, we've got all these different streaming services, Mixcloud, and you know, people do live streams on YouTube, Facebook, whatever. We're really spoiled for choice. If you miss a radio show, you can go back and listen to it most of the time. The next day, the DJs either put it up or the stations put it up. Back in the day, if you didn't record that show, and you wouldn't be able to record the whole show anyway, because you'd only have a 90-minute tape at best. If you didn't record it, you missed it. Like, so it's like, it was something, I think we cherished it all a little bit more back then. Like if I was listening to, like I used to listen to, as I mentioned earlier, Nick S and Nike, like every week on Delight, I used to listen to them. Solid Sundays, you know, various different DJs back in the day, you know, across all different stations. Hatcher was someone I used to tune into religiously. And yeah, like if you didn't catch it at that time, like, bro, you'd be pissed. Like you'd be actually pissed.
There was no archives, like, you know, like Flex FM at the minute and Rinse. They've got the, you know, the I can't think of the word, but you can go back through.
Yeah, it's just all archived and automated. Yeah.
So there was none of that. You had to be recording at the time, hoping your aerial's in the right position, because certain stations didn't come through. So obviously being in West London, we got Ice quite clear, but trying to catch like a Freak FM set, it was hard, and some other sets as well, because there was other pirate stations that I got into and started listening to. Like I remember listening to the Supreme Team. I think they were on Magic. So that was Starkey, DJ Swirly, and MC Precious. But trying to get their set was always a bit difficult. And then on like Freak, you had people like MC Dollars, who wasn't as, he did get a few bookings, but he wasn't there. So they were kind of like pirate radio guys that you had to lock into and listen to hear them. So we did used to record, and I remember like at school, not everyone was into garage. I remember bringing my first few tapes. I remember in my class, like there wasn't a lot of people that like garage at all, and I used to bring the tapes in to try, and I still speak to my mate about it now. I'm still in contact with him from school, and he still says his memory's so good. Like he'd be better on here than me because he remembers everything. The things he tells me, I'm like, wow, how do you remember that? So yeah, we used to bring the tapes in. We used to be allowed to play them in like the art class and stuff like that. And I remember like a big memory for me and a turning point was where a lot of people didn't really like the garage as much, but I had Romeo and Neutrino as guests on Ice. I heard Ricky D saying it when he done his podcast as well. But having them on as guests, for me, they were like just people that I looked up to, as because they were like big MCs at the time, and they were different to what we'd had. Like So was kind of new. I kind of got to meet them through being at Coliseum and at Liberty, and they done their Delight FM nights there. So I was lucky enough to be on a linked one. Like I think it was Garage Delight's first birthday, along with Liberty. So I got to meet all them guys, and you know, it was a great opportunity. They come on, you know, I asked them would they come on, and they did. Roman and Trina both come on. Obviously had to record that one. Someone recorded it for me. But playing that in class, a few of the people were like, oh, you don't know who they are. Like, nah, no way, you know, sort of thing. And I was like, how do they know who they are? Do you know what I mean? So I kind of then realized that garage was going a little bit more straight mainstream with people like So Solid, and their tracks were being more heard. It wasn't just the pirate radio as much at that point. But that's kind of digressing. But just while it's on my mind, I remember that kind of thing, going from the tape packs and listening to radio. It kind of started coming to that point. Then I think I might have been a little bit older than like 15. So yeah, I think that was like year 2000 times.
So, you know, turn of the century, yeah, as you say, like So Solid were blowing up around then. And yeah, obviously we all know what they went and achieved.
Yeah.
It's crazy for me that by that point you were already several years in the game and you'd already kind of achieved more than a lot of pirate radio DJs and people that we might have even known over the years have ever got and done in terms of actually playing at big events and things like that. Ricky said it ran till about 2003 and it kind of already bounced before the end. Were you on there until the very end, and what was the next step in the journey for you?
There was a lot of changes on Ice, and I think it just come to a point where it didn't fizzle out, but it just kind of stopped. And then I got on Freeze not that long after it, to be honest, from leaving ISFM. I think I got on Freeze, and the sound was going a little bit darker. I used to do a lot of stuff with Black Ops, like Johnny Cash and Black Ops. So it was like a sub-low sound. So Johnny lived local to me, so he used to drop me records, which I was actually playing on Ice. And not a lot of people were going for that sound at the time, but in the clubs it worked. Like it kind of went from Coliseum to Gas a little bit. I started playing at Gas a lot of times, and another great venue, totally different to Coliseum in size, but that kind of small kind of vibe, people banging off the walls, and it felt very, do you know what I mean, enclosed. Great atmosphere in there. So the sound went that way a little bit. I've done a show with them guys. I've done a show with Black Ops on Freeze. And then I think there come the years where I've heard you talking about on your other podcast, actually, where I think it was 0203, where everything kind of went a bit quiet.
Yeah.
And then I think I just lived a little bit of a kind of, I wouldn't call it a normal life, but obviously you go from DJing to being busy a lot of weekends to kind of doing what a guy at that age would probably want to do. You know what I mean?
I think a big problem at that time was a lot of the garage events were getting locked off. So you had a lot of, it wasn't necessarily So Solid's fault. I remember seeing interviews of them about it, and one of them was, I think it was Harvey, was saying like someone got shot in a club and they blamed it on So Solid, and he was like, I'm So Solid, I was at home in bed that night, like I don't know, like so, you know, just to give context. But because, you know, the scene had kind of mutated a little bit and the MC thing was quite big, and you had a lot more of the gang culture kind of creeping into the scene, not necessarily because of the DJs, but just because the sound was darker. And also when things are popular, as we all know, more people jump on it. When you have more people anywhere, the population of idiots goes up just by the law of averages, you know. So in that sense, a lot of garage events, I remember my dad was DJing a lot around Croydon and stuff at that time, and he's like, we've been told we can't even play garage, even if it's a non-garage event. And he used to DJ at like the Yateses and places like that, and McCluskey's in Croydon, and what was then Escapade. Everyone will remember that if you're from Croydon. Like him and Brasstooth, like they were always getting told like you can't play garage, you just can't do it anymore. So I think there was a period of time where garage events were just getting locked off by local councils all the time. So it did have that lull, you know, around 2003, because it's just them's the rules, mate. So but
I think that's what kind of pushed me into, I wouldn't call it a break, but just there wasn't much going on. And even radio wise, I think there wasn't too much. Things were still happening, but the sound was changing. So still things happening, but just the whole scene kind of went quiet and not a lot of club nights on. So I just had a bit of kind of time of kind of just going out with friends and enjoying that time. And then I come back to it. I can't think the exact year, but I come back to it, and there was a lot of like 4/4 stuff around at that time, a lot of new garage, and there was a sister station to Freeze, which was called Vibe FM. And I used to just do my own thing on there and just enjoy mixing again on a station. And you know, I weren't great at hosting, never been great at hosting. I've always really had MCs on my set, so I'm not the best at picking up the mic at all. But I started like enjoying radio again. And then I remember there was a meeting, I think a radio meeting, where Vibe FM and Freeze FM were kind of being sister stations all together. And I think it was Ricky that said to me, we're going to bring you back over to Freeze. And that would be fast forwarding then to probably 2004 or 5, I think.
Yeah, I remember around, I think it was from about 2005 onwards, I used to, you know, fanboy moment, although not really because we've known each other for years. But
yeah, of course.
I used to listen to you and Sharky and then Hypes, obviously,
Yeah,
every week on the Sunday religiously. Because what happened, like around that time, I used to go and visit my dad every weekend, and on a Sunday, he used to drop me off. He lived in Bromley,
yeah,
and at the time I was living in East, so I was living over in like Clapton kind of way. And for a while I was living in Islington for quite a bit as well. So he used to just like drive across London and drop me off every weekend. It just used to be our like little bonding time in the car. But every week we'd get in and we'd just jump in the car and put on Freeze. And because the signal boomed so much, we could get it from Bromley
yeah, yeah,
all the way up, like through Blackwall and up straight up into East London. Or if I was living in North London, we picked it up easy there as well. So
yeah.
every Sunday without fail, stuck in traffic, listening to you and Sharky. And if we were lucky, it would carry on into the later show as well. So
Yeah, me and Sharky started doing the Sunday 4 till 6. That's where my memory's bad, because obviously I met Sharky being on Ice, and I can't remember how we come about to do that show together on Freeze. To be honest, might remember better, but that was another quite big show for me, because it kind of brought me
that
back.
show was huge, bro. That show was absolutely massive.
Freeze was big, and like I was saying about the kind of no social media in them days. We're probably getting into more the time where things probably were starting, like MySpace and things like that.
Yeah,
maybe.
MySpace was popular at that point, but
you still didn't really understand. Me being on Ice, apart from being in a record shop and speaking to a few people, and then seeing people out, you didn't really know how big things were. Now everyone kind of goes on likes or comments and blah blah blah. Like then you just you wanted real comments and likes. You know what I mean? Like people coming up to you in a club saying, "I was listening to your radio show today. It was a great feeling." Do you know what I mean? Or coming into the record shop and saying, "Oh, I heard your set the other day." So you still didn't really know how big things were. So even the set on Freeze with Sharky, you kind of did go on the phone line. If the phone line was busy, you knew a lot of people were locked on. But there was times where you do your own show and you'd think no one's calling. But it's just because there's not that interaction like when there's an MC like Sharky on. So we used to do the 4 till 6, and then like you said, Hyperactive was on after us. So it was a good fun Sunday. Sometimes we used to hang around after, and we just kind of make a day of it. So yeah, it was good times.
I will always remember being in the car with my dad the first time he ever heard Sharky do Stinky Pants, and I think he had to pull the car over because he was cracking up so much.
Funny you say that, because my missus and her mum would be with her in the car sometimes, and she said her mum used to love it as well. She used to laugh to say, like, it's just brilliant. Stinky Pants was just legendary, wasn't it?
Absolutely, mate. It's one of my favorite moments in pirate radio history, especially on Freeze, between Stinky Pants and Kenke. Sundays are the bollocks, mate.
I used to ask Kenke for jingles, because I just used to love his voice. I used to do things, and he was just so funny. Once he come in, he was just make you crack up. But Stinky Pants, I don't know if everyone would know what it is, but I don't even know if there's a link on YouTube. I might have to speak to Sharky. We might have to kind of do it properly so people know what it was.
My dad said to me, he's like, because at the time I'd just started getting into radio and stuff. He's like, listen, he's like, I don't know if you know him or anything. He's like, but if you bump into him, tell him I'd give him £500 for a dub plate of that tune.
Really? Yeah, it was massive. It was massive. Like it just got requested every week.
It was it was like the dub mix of Favorite Girl, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And Sharky would sing over the top of it, like that
made up his own tune.
Stinky Pants, bruv. The bars, like everything. It's just, if it is out there and anyone's got a copy of it, please do email me TheOverTheHillPodcast@gmail.com, and I will upload it to one of the episodes. I might even go back and edit this one and stick it on this episode as an intro, because
so they know what it is.
Mate, absolutely legendary stuff. So obviously Freeze at the time, I've said it before and I'll say it again, for me I think it's probably the best station of all time. Maybe you got ones that ran longer. Obviously you've got Cool was still doing their thing. Rinse ran for a very long time. Obviously Rinse was very influential in so many different music genres, but they've gone legit, so I kind of put them in a different category. And Cool is like a single genre station, but Freeze did a bit of everything. So for me, in terms of sound quality, it did have quite a long run. Had some of the best DJs on there, some massive names coming through on a regular basis, if not permanently on every show. Obviously, for the full Freeze FM story, again, go back and listen to the episode of Ashley J, because that's a quality listen as well, and check out his documentary too. But Freeze, like playing on that station, can you like even describe how mental the phone line must have been going on a regular basis? Because I know you said you don't really like to bother looking or talking on the mic, and obviously with Sharky there, it takes that away from you quite a bit. What was the experience like in the studio? Because I've been on shows, bruv, where you're trying to look at messages and like you just can't do it. And I can imagine like that must have been bananas up there.
Yeah, when we had a few guests on, sometimes it would just be like you just neglect a lot of the phone line, to be honest, because it's too crazy. You'll just be talking the whole way through it. And I mean, if the show is that busy as me DJing on my own, I probably wouldn't be able to keep up with it. You'd probably be running like 2 tracks just back to back to try and, you know, do all the shouts. But Sharky used to keep up with it well. He was always good at interacting with the listeners as well and making it funny and a laugh. I remember sometimes he used to, like, when the music used to go down, he'd say something to me. And one time he's like, speak back, man, so I don't sound like I'm on my own, because I was always just so nervous to talk. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, we still had fun with it. You know what I mean? Like, in the studio was just a good vibe. And the phone line being busy was a good feeling, because it makes you want to play more. Do you know what I mean? You kind of, like I said, you sometimes think when you're playing and the phone line's not busy that no one's listening, so you kind of sometimes just kind of roll on with it. But when the phone line's busy and you're getting requests and stuff, the show just goes really quick. It's just kind of a fun time to be. So yeah, Freeze was really good to be on. Rinse, Flex, 2 stations that have come from like pirate days that have gone legal, so they're doing amazing. I've been lucky enough to guest on them as well over the last few years or longer. And mentioning Cool as well, like that was a station that I listened to just before I got into garage. I was kind of into jungle, so I remember listening to Cool FM, and that was great. And then you kind of had Chicago FM as well.
Yep.
That was kind of like the Chicago house going into the garage, the US kind of garage, Todd Edwards style, and then Tough Jam and whatnot. And that was the era that I loved. But it was Cool FM first. I used to love the jungle, and a lot of my friends mixed jungle, where I used to go to like one of the youth clubs to mix, which was our rugby club in Nabbit Grove. We used to go there and have a mix, and a lot of the guys that were having a mix, you kind of had a certain amount of time each, and they used to play jungle. Yeah, so I did like jungle. Had a, you know, kind of strong thing for me leading into the garage.
Yeah, as I say, man, Cool. Like, you know, just in terms of what they've managed to achieve and stuff, they're the granddaddy, in all honesty. But as I say, they're a single genre station, so I can't quite put them in the same category as Freeze. So for me, Freeze is the best ever. You know, I can happily sit here and say that. And if anyone wants to argue with me, you know, the email address is there.
It's a massive one for me as well. I think Ice would probably be one of the main ones, or my main one, only because the story that I had behind that and being so young and starting out on that. So that was like I think I'd been doing it so long by the time I was on Freeze. Like I said, I probably didn't realize as big as it was. As much as they had the events in Watford and places like that, and the artists they were booking, because I heard you saying about like people like Kano mentioning Ricky and Ingrid and Skepta, you know, they were doing massive things. So I think you just kind of roll with it at that point and not realize. Whereas Ice, I was a bit more starstruck because I was just starting out and meeting all these people at different times, and then they run events like Exposure, and they were kind of like the tape packs that I listened to get the experience of garage before I could go out. So it's a hard one, but two massive stations.
I think when you get to that age as well, when you actually get into your late teens and early 20s, you start to have a little bit more self-awareness and self-control. Whereas when you're a younger age, you're kind of just along for the ride, bro. You're just like, literally, I look back on my life now, and I look back at like times of being like 14, 15, up to like 18, 19. And I'm like, how did I not die half of the time? But it's just that you're carrying along with the wind, bro. And it's just like, obviously, if you're in an environment like that, then you're going to get swept up. But you mentioned a couple of things there, obviously, about, you know, Freeze taking over the events in Watford and various other places across London as well. At that point for you, obviously some of the bigger garage promotions took a breather, shall we say, but there still was a lot of stuff going on, like, you know, as you say, area Watford and all them places up there, and loads of different clubs that weren't necessarily you know, around in the heyday of UK garage, but a lot of places did, you know, were part of continuing it. And obviously then the UK funky thing come along and everything was all kind of mixed in together. At that point for you with bookings, I mean, over the years, you've built nothing you've ever come out and said yourself, because you're, you know, quite a humble person who never really says much, but you built a reputation for being one of the best, if not the best outside of EZ, according to, you know, public opinion. A lot of people over the years I've heard say that, and I don't disagree. At that point in time, obviously the bookings must have started to go a little bit crazy for you.
Yeah, bookings picked up again. Like I said, because I did have that little break, so you know, it went from like the Ice days, the under 18s, and then started picking up to kind of that again, and maybe even busier, which was great, because like I said, it just becomes normal. But then you do have to miss birthday parties and things like that. You know, not everyone's as understanding. Oh, I've got a booking on a Friday, or I've got a, you know, booking on a Saturday night, which was kind of the norm. Or you're going from club to club and trying to catch your times and parking and rushing and whatnot. But it's all part of the fun, to be honest. It's a little bit of that kind of excitement. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it did get really busy, and I was fortunate enough to be on a lot of the events, and enjoy that time. You know, even then it was still, you know, you did have some of the events that were kind of more on the kind of maybe grimier side. The UK funky was coming big, and I loved it all, to be honest. I mixed a little bit of everything, but I think garage has always been my main go to because everyone kind of requests that from me when I play out. But I mean, I do a lot of parties and stuff, and I play a lot of club classic stuff. I'm quite known for that, like the old funky house and club classic stuff. I'm known for that at a lot of parties, like locally, because that's where I came from and what I've done. But yeah, garage is just the main thing. You know, you do get stick from some people like, oh, you're playing the same tunes and but while there's a clientele for it and people request it, like if I do a radio show now, I'm guaranteed I know what tunes are going to be requested because that's what people know you for. And yeah, it's a great thing that it's gone so long, you know, and so strong. There's a big argument that it should have gone a little bit more new school, and there's been attempts, you know, with the 4/4 stuff, and let's say even a few years back, Mike Delinquent was doing a lot of stuff. We've got Predator, Conductor, so there's people now doing a lot of things, but it's like kind of different scenes. It didn't really branch off that same way, but a lot of music's like the dubsteps and the UK funky, I think they did stem from garage, and a lot of the big DJs were garage DJs. So you know, they were good times as well.
Yeah, man, for sure. Evolution is what it is. And I mean, with garage, yeah, you've had these little pop-ups and stuff, but we live in a different time now where you've still got a lot of good garage coming out. There's some good garage music coming out there, but you're not ever really going to have a scene like you did back then. I think the age of having scenes, like club scenes, is kind of done. Like, you still have your tech house scene and everything else, but to me, you know, I'll say it, I don't give a fuck. I'll say it. Like, to me, it's all pretentious dickheads that are involved in them kind of things nowadays. For me, bruv, like, I've been involved in things so many times over the years and just watched it go from one thing to another. Like, I was around through all of that deep tech stuff, and I was pushing all of the music every week on radio. Like, apart from, you know, maybe one other guy, like, my show was absolutely huge during them times on Flight. Like, there was only one person that was probably bigger than me, and like, bruv, I've pushed that sound, but then I watched it turn into just like this pretentious fucking towie culture, and you know, like, everything was about, you know, posting stuff on Insta, or, you know, what floral shirt have you got on this week, and like, you know, it all becomes silly. So for me, that's the only scene that's really left, apart from maybe drum and bass, because drum and bass is just like a global phenomenon at the end of the day. But like, in terms of having something raw that comes through like a garage, or reviving that garage scene, you're never going to get that back. But you will still have, as you mentioned, a couple of people there, like, you will still have really good garage producers and garage music. But I don't think, you know, even that little revival that they tried to have, it was never going to be the same. It was lightning in a bottle the first time, and you know, you can't capture that. So but obviously, yeah, things do progress, and clearly you did as well. In terms of, you know, coming to the end of the time on Freeze, obviously we first ran into each other when I jumped on Ice Cold. Did you leave Freeze and jump on straight away? Because I was talking to Steve about it, and he said it just, like, it's one of them things where it happened that Freeze closed, and he just happened to have, like, he was sort of restarting and everyone was coming in, and he just kind of got lucky to get quite a few of the big DJs. How was that process for you?
Again, my memory's so shocking. Like, I should really note it all down to remember. But it's good to tell the story and then kind of remember little bits. But I can't even remember stopping. Like with Ice, you know, I can't fully remember stopping in and getting on Freeze or how long it was. The same with leaving Freeze, because there was Image and there was Ice Cold. So even now, I always think, what was first? You know, I forget things. But they were good times because we went on Ice Cold, and then, you know, a bit like you had Gas back in the day. We had Black Club, which was a small club, kind of local to my kind of area, and you got a good little vibe in there. So them times when I met you guys, you know, yourself, Mr. E, Spenny, Hyperactive was coming to a lot of the gigs, and we were all on there, and Sharky come on again as well with us. So it kind of was like a follow-on from Freeze. You know, it didn't let things die out again. It wasn't like the break that I'd had years before. It just rolled straight through. So it was Ice Cold, wasn't it, with Steve Williams straight after?
Yeah, so Steve told the story. He initially ran a station called Image with someone else, and then he was doing Ice Cold with Charlie, and then Charlie kind of stepped back from it, and Steve took it back over simply on his own, and it was Ice Cold up until the point Charlie came back and wanted the name back, and then he changed it to Image a little bit later on.
That's how it happened. And yeah, so yeah, Ice Cold, and obviously, you know, you got Ice, and then you got Freeze, and then Ice Cold. So it was kind of like
West London was fucking cold, bruv.
Oh, there was like a theme going on. So yeah, no, it was really good. It was really good. And bookings again, like I mentioned, Black Club and places like that, and we started doing like Libertaire in Acton. So they had their own things going on. So yeah, it was a bit like the Freeze and Ice days, you know, kind of a station that had good DJs on there, good MCs, and doing events. And there was DJs doing other music genres on there as well. So like you said, it wasn't just garage. That was a bit of a mixed genre station, a bit like how Freeze was, because you had like Chucky on Freeze, and Double D Experience, people like that who were playing in some of them Watford events and places like that. So yeah, Ice Cold was a good step for me because it just followed through and didn't allow me to take my foot off the gas, because sometimes when you're not doing radio and bookings aren't coming in, you kind of do become a little bit, I wouldn't say irrelevant, but I remember going out to a few nights and people being like, oh, I haven't seen you in ages. And it is a little bit like out of sight, out of mind. And, you know, then bookings won't always come in if you're not relevant or doing something, or like one of my regrets is not producing. You know, I've always done little bits. I was always in the studio with Johnny, but always listening to his stuff and kind of watching, but never done my own thing. You remember Lee Night Shift?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Frenzy. So he was on.
We took over Definition Audio from him. So yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, he started doing big things, but even before he went on to that with the Night Shift kind of stuff, and he was Frenzy, I was with him and he was making a lot of tracks, and we used to kind of do a couple of bits together as well. I kind of tried my hand at it, but I never done enough, I think, to stay on it. So that was one of my kind of regrets, because I think producing is a thing that can help a DJ massively. If you're not doing stuff like that.
It's quite interesting because it was something I was gonna touch on after we spoke about the DJ, and was like, you know, you were someone, as you know, as I mentioned earlier, you had this reputation for being one of the best out there. You know, your mixing style was your own, but you were someone that could emulate that crazy, you know, frenzied bloody EZ style with the cuts and the drops and the reverbs and the switches. And you, like, I've watched you shell down raves like differently. And obviously other people can do it nowadays, like, you know, people like Cartier and stuff like that, they're very good at that kind of style. But you know, you were doing it for a long time, and, you know, big. But I was going to ask about, you know, the production side of things, and just if that's something that, you know, you never really were interested in. So it's good to hear that you were into it. But mate, I'm the same. Like, I've touched on it so many times, and we had the label and everything else, but it's just, I don't know about you, but for me, it's like, I'm very impatient. Like, I can't sit and focus on stuff, and I can't hear things over and over again. Like, that's why I can't go out raving nowadays and hear the same tunes I've already heard. Like, I need to hear new stuff, or maybe a forgotten gem that I haven't heard for 10 years. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I've got that really short attention span of like, oh, I've done this. Like, what was
producers they have to listen to the same thing over and over and stuff, don't they? So it's a hard one. I mean, I think it was just a thing of me not putting 100% in, you know, like I did with DJing. If I'd done that with producing, and sometimes it's not a hard thing. It's just like, right, you get a program on your computer, learn the basics, then build on it, and then start, you know, getting some bits. And I just never really got to do that. I don't know why, to be honest. I don't know. Maybe I was too busy with DJing. But I don't really know. Like, even with Frenzy, like Night Shift, when he did give me a program to put on my computer, when I put it on there, you don't want to drive him mad. So sometimes, like, you know, with that bit there, and, you know, things were just kind of, it's not easy. There's a lot to it. But once you know now, like being in the studio with Johnny, he used to have his thing was just massive. It was just like a big, massive, like mixing board. And he just had things everywhere. And I was like, how do you even know what is what there? I mean, some people probably think it when we're DJing on certain mixes, and we're like, it's just four. You're only using two. It just looks like a lot. You know, some mixes are big, but them things there, I was just like, there's so much to it. Where now you could probably just make something on your Mac. You know what I mean? You don't need too much. You just need like some plugins and blah, blah. Look, it's never too late. You never know. You know, when I get a bit too old for the DJ and my kids start saying, Dad, come on now. You know what I mean? You gotta turn it in. I might, you know, just do a little bit of producing, but I think it would have helped me. I think it would have helped my DJing, because, you know, it's lovely to have compliments from yourself and hearing people, you know, compare you to people. I mean, for me, EZ was, like I said earlier about Carl Brown, EZ was another guy, like, where just watching him mix was just something else. You know, you're definitely a massive fan. You're just being a fan. To work alongside him, play before him and after, is just, you know what I mean? It's like crazy, really. Same as getting on ice with the people, you know, you're just kind of living your dream in a way. So yeah, watching people like that is amazing. And, you know, they've all had a touch in production. You know, if we go back to all the people back in Garage, Dream Team, you know, the Dream Team, EZ did his probably his dubs that kind of, his mixing style set him aside, but his dubs were just something else. Carl Tough Enough Brown, the same, and he was part of Tough Jam. So, you know, a lot of the people, we can name so many names, they really had a big thing with production and their own tracks. So you see it a lot in the house industry. A lot of the DJs are kind of producers, aren't they? Yep. You know, because you book a guy that's made 20 massive tunes and you're going to get exclusives. It's a big sell. Even
if they're a shit DJ.
You know, some people don't rate them as much as a DJ as they are producer, you know, so, but it helps. So if I had done production and kind of stuck it might have helped a bit better to get me, you know, I've done amazing things, but, you know, I think if you weren't part of that kind of household first starters in garage, you always kind of struggle to kind of maybe just slip in a bit above. But I would never knock, you know, how much I've done and the events I've been on. So it's been amazing. But it probably would have helped. Yeah, probably would have helped a little. It's one of my not regrets, but one thing I should have maybe stepped a bit more on.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see where it went. And as you say, it's never too late. And the thing is about having kids is if you sit them in front of enough YouTube videos and buy them the software, they'll probably be able to ghost produce the music for you anyway in the next couple of years. Because you know how quick the kids pick these things up, bro.
I was going to say I could get them to just do it for me and let me just add my name to it, because they pick up things quicker than us, because they're just little tutorial. I mean, I'm rubbish with instructions. I end up just trying to put something together because all that detail I get lost. But kids are just they can be fixed. I mean, my oldest, he got a little program on his iPad at one point. He was doing, and I was like, that sounds decent. Like, he's got a good ear for it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. My youngest, he's had a little mess around the decks. They both have. So I never pushed them into it, but it's something that, you know, they're here. If they could have a little go at it or do the production, it would be good. It'd be a really good thing. But it's never too late. Like you said, having kids, you know, it makes it a little bit harder. Sometimes you don't want a studio in your house and then you got to go out. Studio can be quite time consuming as well. Yeah. Like making a track. Some people they say, I made this in no time, but being in the studio, sometimes you can go there and get blocked. You know, a lot of people get blocked and they're like, they've probably got 1,000 tunes that they haven't moved on with. Do you know what I mean? That are better than tunes that they've released and you've heard. They're just sitting there because, like you said about that repetitiveness and hearing the same bit over and over, they're like, something's missing, and you can get fed up and leave it. So it can be time consuming. I think it's a thing where I should have just got into it. But I'm very lucky. Like, my missus always says to me, you should have made a track, you should do it. So I'm quite lucky to have that support where they're pushing me to do it and pushing me to DJ. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So otherwise it'd be like, wait, are you at the studio again or whatever? Like, you know, that could make it hard. But I think I should maybe just try and find that time. But it's difficult.
Yeah, it's man. It's difficult to find the time to sit down and do a bloody podcast. You know what I mean? It's just
yeah. It's like, have I got an hour? So studio can take hours, but yeah, look, it's not out of the question anymore. It's still something that I could, and you know, garage is still going strong. I know a lot of people say still the old school stuff, but there's still a lot of good events. You know, like you said, there's been a lot of tried, like the 4/4 stuff. You know, the other stuff we were talking about. But some of these events are still really, you know, they're going off, and I think the crowds are becoming younger. So it's like a nostalgic thing where I think some of them are probably like siblings or their parents listen to garage, and it still plays on Kiss like regularly. Yeah. So somehow you do play at events where it's only them tracks that are big, but it's nice to play at some other events like UKG Brunch where I play. You know, it's nice to play some of the tunes there where, you know, people are really coming to hear them old classic ones and enjoy it.
I was going to touch on UKG Brunch and something that happened there recently, but we'll do that before the end. In terms of obviously ice and you know, ice cold image, as it became, we used to do events at places like Hidden, Black Club, as you said, like all the lavish stuff. Loads of stuff was popping off for all of us at that point. Obviously, me, Spencer, and Eamon started having our own things at Pasha and blah blah blah. At that point for you, did you start doing any international bookings and stuff like that as well? Were you going out over to Beaver and Napa and places like that?
Not too many. Like, I did do Iron Napa, but in the early years I'd done Iron Napa, I think it was 2001.
Did you have an adult passport by then?
16. I think I was 16 when I went to Iron Napa. But yeah, you know, I think another thing where I'm not great on like social media and like this day and age, you kind of need that. Back then you didn't need it as much, but I think for someone to fly you out, you kind of need that kind of the big names. There's all good people saying, I think he's really good and he'd do a good set. You know, I think for a promoter, you had to kind of be a name pool. So I didn't do as many as I probably could have. And I never really pushed on stuff as well. You know, I was always a little bit, not proud, but just, I probably could have said, right, I'm in Iron Napa, I'm going to come over, I'm going to do this and that. But, you know, I was lucky enough to play in Iron Napa and Ibiza, also done Dubai as well with Sharky. So that was so I've had good experiences, but not the kind of, you know, some people go and do the whole season and stuff like that. I suppose where I was busy in London as well, in the UK, you probably couldn't take that much time out. Whereas I think if you're an up-and-coming DJ, it's a good opportunity to go over somewhere like Iron Napa and get a bar residency and play through and have fun. But yeah, for me, I didn't really do it too regular. But yeah, I was lucky enough to play Iron Napa, which was a great time as well. That was a great year for garage when I went. And Ibiza and Dubai, yeah. So still good ones.
It's handy when the other DJs go away and they spend a season abroad anyway, because you end up cleaning up all their bookings, bro.
Yeah, so it may be better that I didn't go, eh? Cleaned up.
Obviously, I left Image in around 2012, and it closed down. Me and Steve were talking about it probably less than a year later. What did you do after that? Was that the last time you had a full-time regular radio show?
So leaving Image, where did I go from there? 2012. Geez, thinking about it now.
Because there weren't really much popping off after the Image, though, like around that time, not locally anyway.
Yeah, I think that was probably the end of my kind of radio days, to be honest. And even thinking now, like radio is quite hard to do weekly. Do you know what I mean? Because at that point you're going to the studio, so you're kind of not a day out, but you're doing a 2-hour set. If it's an hour away, that's 4 hours. So it can take a bit of a while. But I think I've just kind of done some guest shows a lot of the time from then onwards. I think some guest shows and things like that. Yeah, and just I think you enjoy guest shows more then as well when you're not on radio regular, because you're going on with people that are calling you on. I mean, I struggle now to do as many guest shows. I do try, but you struggle to get on as many and struggle to do a weekly show. Even if you can do it from home, some people can. You still struggle for that time. But I'm trying to think of 2012. Like I said, I'm rubbish for my years and times. But yeah, I can't think now what I done after. I don't think I went on radio after that.
Yeah, I think a lot of us kind of, once we finished doing that, I don't think there was a lot of us that did regular shows. As you say, there was always guest shows. I mean, I did. I was back on Flight FM within a year, and I was on there for a couple of years. Then I went on to S Dance and the old Supreme and whatnot, and
Yeah,
and represent. But yeah, man, it's I think me, you, Spenny, Eamon, I think most of us that bounced. I know they did the London Live thing for a little bit. That the sort of was the spin off of what was Image. But yeah, for me, it kind of died down. I was just obviously I was talking to Hypes about it as well, and I think he said after he left, it was just like
yeah,
pretty much just guest shows from there on in. Obviously, you've remained active. You've continuously still been doing bookings and stuff. And obviously, as I say, I do want to touch on the present day stuff. But over, the course of the last 20 years, what have been, some of the favorite brands that you've played for? If you had to pick three brands and three
great.
events that you've played for, what would you think they would be?
That's a hard one because you don't want to miss people out because some of them are, I think I'd probably
the scene gets mad political as well.
He didn't mention me, not booking him again. You know what? I'll mention two that come straight to mind because it's current and the other one's from the start. So UKG Brunch at the minute, because I'm lucky enough to be resident for them. So, I'm playing there all the time. Great events as well. And things aren't overly busy all the time. So when you've got something as regular and you're doing a residency, I'd have to mention UKG Brunch because it's been a good few years now that I've been resident. I know we lost a lot of time with COVID, but we still were lucky to have some events because they were seated and obviously they have food there. So we did have some events kind of happening throughout it when some events weren't happening, but that's a really good event. It's just a fun daytime, and daytime raving is never really knew of it before. You know what I mean? So I'd have to mention them because I've gone to places with them. I mean, they do things in Dubai as well. I was just unlucky not to go to Dubai with them just because of timings, really. But I've been to Leeds with them, Brighton, Birmingham, Cardiff, and obviously London twice a month at least sometimes. So, yeah, UKG Brunch. And then probably Liberty would be the other one because starting out to go into a club at that age and play to over 18 crowd and in a club like Club Coliseum, places like that, probably Liberty. I suppose a name that always stands out, the third one would probably have to be Garage Nation because I was lucky to play for them for so long and so many times, and that being such a big foundation name. Do you know what I mean? When you go back to names of like Sun City and the tape packs you used to listen to, Garage Nation was a massive name. So I remember the feeling of getting onto Garage Nation for the first time, which was another funny story because I wasn't actually booked in the main room. So sometimes when you speak to a promoter and they're like, I'm going to put you on it or you're going to get on it, and you're like, cool, but it just didn't end up happening. But I was supposed to be in room 2 for Steve Williams, talking about Steve Williams. I think it was an Image or an Ice Cold room 2. And I'd got loads of CDs made of a mix that I'd done. And it just started snowing like really heavy. So like the roads were kind of, all covered and people were like, oh, we're going to go down there or not. And I was kind of set on going. So I was like, I remember saying to my missus, I'm going to go anyway. So she was like, yeah, all right, go for it. Because you got all your CDs, you may as well go. Where we lived was on like a little hill. And our little boy was only young, our first one. And then, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to, I'll drop you guys to your mum's because at least you're with people in case we bloody get snowed in. And I'm going to make my way down there. It was at Scala. But before we left, Steve Williams called me and he's like, do you want to play in the main room? And I was like, yeah, definitely. He's like, you still coming? I was like, yeah, even more so now. Do you know what I mean? Which I was. And then he called again. And I think he rang 3 times offering me different times. So I was like, mate, are any DJs even coming? Like, you've offered me nearly like 3 sets. And he was like, yeah, no, like we've got however many people in there. I don't know if he said 1,000, but I think he said about 1,000 people in there. So I was like, so the ravers are there, but the DJs were struggling on the roads were on. So I was like, look, I'm coming if I make it or not. And I did. So that was my first Garage Nation, and played at Scala. I think that was 2012. So I've done some kind of like co-promotions for Garage Nation, you know, like back in the day, like Bar Naz and you know, people that use the brand in kind of smaller places. But that was my first official Garage Nation, because it was snowing. So and then from then on, you know, he booked me quite regularly, which was great. So yeah, I would say Liberty, Garage Nation, and UKG Brunch would probably be the 3 that outstands, you know, top of my head.
So talking of UKG Brunch, it's Matt. I didn't mention this to you before we went on, and I haven't really mentioned it on the podcast. So I've been saving it until we spoke. But I saw a random video on TikTok a couple of days ago. Well, no, a couple of weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And some woman had posted it, and I don't know why, for whatever reason, algorithm just shows it up in your feed, because I don't really follow many people on TikTok. I just go in there to look at it, because some of the accounts on there are hilarious. I do have a TikTok, by the way, the Over the Hill podcast. It is on there, and I do post up clips from the podcast, but no one really pays me any attention on there, so it's calm. But you never know, one might go viral, might even be today. But yeah, so I was watching a video on there, and there's a woman in the crowd at UKG Brunch.
Yeah.
And basically her husband or boyfriend ended up on the decks there. And I was 99% sure when I looked in the background, I was like, I know that Donny on the decks.
Yeah.
Could you tell me the story, or the actual full story of what happened there?
Yeah, so what we do, so UKG Brunch, if anyone hasn't been or experienced, I mean, I've even got friends that have been saying for the years that I've been doing it, they're going to come along. It's just making it happen. But I've had loads come, but some people still haven't come to experience. So it's 90 minutes of like cocktails, well, not cocktail, like rum punch, bottomless, and then food as well, like chicken wings, chips. And then we do some games within that time. So it's kind of sat down, seated, and we play like kind of not mellow. We kind of play some nice tunes and then bring it up. Everyone kind of starts partying for a bit, then they eat, chill, but we do games in between. And I think this one was one of the games for treasure hunt, where we call out a few things that you need to get, and they need to go out into the crowd and get them. But I think just before that, we kind of asked what they are and what they do. And funny enough, just before him, there was a girl who does MCing. So she started MCing, and then he was next, and he said, I'm a DJ. So because we let her MC, Uri Styler, who's the host on the day, he was like, well, should we let him have a mix? And I think a few people were kind of looking like, oh, like, should we or not? But the guy was actually good. Yeah, he was good.
He started shelling the rave. I was like, what's going on?
I thought that was me, mate. I was going to pack my bags. But I think if you see at the beginning at the start, I kind of duck under the decks. When he says he's a DJ, I was kind of like, that's me then, done. But yeah, we let him have a mix, and it went down really well. It's the first time we've done it. Might be the last, to be honest, because everyone was a little bit worried about it. But yeah, it was a good experience, and it gets people involved. You know what I mean? The whole crowd, you know, got involved with it, so it was good.
It's Parker. I might even try.
Someone sent me that TikTok as well, so it's funny you say that. It must have gone a little bit not viral, but you know, someone sent it to me, and I was like, how did they get it? The person that sent it to me, I was kind of thinking, how did they get it? Did someone sent it to them, or?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's one of those things where it's just an algorithm. I think where I've obviously posted a few clips of the podcast and hashtag like UK Garage or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, for whatever reason, it's come through on there. But yeah, as I say, I don't really like follow any accounts on there. And it wasn't like, I don't think it was a UKG Brunch account. I think it was this woman who'd like,
I think it was the woman randomly. It might have been his wife or his missus. Yeah. So he's a nice guy, actually. He messaged me after, like, thanks for it and blah, blah, blah. And he was going to come to another event that I do called Garage Supper Club. So when he messaged me, he was the same, thanks for it. And I said, well done. Do you know what I mean? Because even if you can mix, to be put under that pressure, yeah, he done really well. But yeah, it's a great day. You should come down, Jay. Honestly, it's a really good day. Like I was quickly telling you, you have the rum punch, the food, and then we move the tables away, come to a certain point, you know, and it's just a party, and everyone's up then. And
Hypes was on my case a couple of weeks ago to come along, so I'm sure.
Yeah, he does.
I'm sure I will at some point next year. Obviously, you've got that going on. You mentioned Supper Club there as well. What's the deal with Supper Club, and what else have you got going on? Obviously, over the festive period and New Year's and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it's not quieted down, but we got a few things in December. November was a lot busier. I was in a lot of different places, but in December I've got a UKG branch this Saturday, which is at the Steel Yard. That's kind of like our regular place, really good club. And then our one after that is the Christmas party on the 17th. Was it the 18th? Saturday.
18th is a Saturday, 18th. I think. Yeah.
The 18th, Saturday the 18th, and that is at Ministry of Sound. So that'll be really good. Massive lineup there. I've got a couple of things over the New Year's, but I need to confirm some. New Year's Day and possibly New Year's Eve, Boxing Day. And I think I had something on the 27th as well. But yeah, I will upload them to my Instagram. Just waiting on a couple of confirmations. But yeah, quite busy. But the 2 branches will be really good. We're sold out this Saturday coming, and I think Ministry will be great. It might be a good one for you to come down to, Jay, to be honest.
Yeah, on the 18th, I've got something popping that I'll tell you about off air. But yeah,
Yeah,
man, I won't be able to make it. It did cross my mind, but yeah, there's something once we hit stop, because it's kind of top secret in a minute. But yeah,
get the
man.
date to
So
come down. It's a daytime thing, so it's a lot of people like it, especially when we get to a certain age, and if you have got kids and stuff, you're home by a good time. You know what I
we
mean?
had that conversation with Hypes, and I said to him, like, literally, I was around someone's house, and they were saying to me, like, they did their first ever festival and they're already in their 30s, and I was like, they done SW4 about 2 years ago, whatever, and they were just like, I said, oh, how'd you find it? He's like, yeah, it's great, because I was at home in bed in time for match of the day.
That's what people like doing, because the hangovers, they get worse, and even the lack of sleep is not as easy. So to go to a brunch, you got to be there pretty early. So you got to get there for 11:45 or where, but it finishes at 6. Some of them go on a bit later. Special all day parties, they go to like 7 or 8. But you're still home. You're still home before you're normally going out raving. So
Yeah.
bit of food and maybe match of the day or something like that, wherever you enjoy it, and then you're home. So I mean, I love them. I enjoy them. Great day, great brand to work for, great team as well. So yeah, really privileged to be on there. Lucky to be on there.
Just before we wrap up, outside of garage, obviously, you've played multi-genre and stuff like that, obviously, but outside of UK garage, what have been some of your favorite genres and favorite producers to listen to outside of UKG?
So it's funny you say this, because I had 2 friends coming back from Leeds actually in my car. I had my iPod. I still play my old school iPod and just kind of have it on shuffle sometimes. And so going back to how I got into music, like I listened to everything, like such a random kind of, like, my mate was like, well, you listen to this and we go from this track into that. He was like, that is just, it's not even a mix, it's just, so I like a little bit of everything. But things that I've always enjoyed kind of mixing would be house. Like I said, because I started off in that kind of the club classic kind of era, the early house stage stuff. And then garage was like my main thing, which I think I always enjoyed mixing garage, because it had a little bit more of the fun style to it that you could do that you don't get away with house. You always get a little bit of grief if you start mixing house like it's garage, because it's not the way it should be done. But yeah, I would say like the UK funky stuff when it came out. So say starting with the jungle, that was out of garage. That was my first kind of stuff I used to listen to on my Walkman, kind of going to school and stuff like that. I always had the tapes from Cool FM. Then it was garage, which has stayed. And we went into things like UK funky. I still love some of the UK funky tracks, still mixed them into some of my garage sets, to be honest. Dubstep, if I'm doing a bit of an instrumentally kind of set, or with an MC, sometimes I'll throw a dubstep track in there. So I love all multi-genre stuff. I mean, then you went into kind of like the deep and techie house, like you were saying. A lot of my friends love that. So you might catch me on nights out on things like that, not always garage nights. So, and I enjoy mixing it as well. Sometimes I'll make mixes for people, with stuff like that. It's just not a genre that I went into kind of playing too much or getting bookings wise. Plus, you do kind of get, people can be funny with it, can't they? Like, oh, he's jumping on this bandwagon or that. But I think if you want to mix and play different stuff, you should enjoy yourself. You know what I mean? And you can enjoy them kind of genres because they're new and fresh as well. So, you're mixing tracks that are kind of new and fresh, which give you that kind of, it's like hearing a track on the radio or going back to pirate radio. You had to record it to remember that. So I get enjoyment from a lot of house stuff. I even like a lot of the it's not new, but Amapiano is kind of becoming quite to the forefront now, so DJs that were quite big in the UK funky scene, like Pioneer, Super D, they're playing a lot of that stuff. I also play a little bit harder as well, not just grimy, but just quite instrumentally as well. So UKG branch, you'll catch me playing, the tracks like Flowers or things like that. But then you can probably hear me on the radio sometimes with MCs playing really grimy and dirty stuff, you know what I mean? Or bassy 2-step stuff. So that's what I love about garage, because all the things I've mentioned, I think kind of stem off from it.
Yeah.
And they're the kind of things I like. So like the Amapiano sound, I love, like if I'm in my car, I love that kind of, I even make my own mixes for the car just with a certain selective tracks. Do you know what I mean? So I would say that, mate, but I'm quite versatile in my music, and I love a bit of everything.
I've been the same over the years. Anyone who's ever heard me put out a mix on Mixcloud or anything like that, I've not done it because I've never said this before publicly, but I've never ever put out a mix for something to be popular or for it to do anything. Like Spencer and Eamon, their mixes, they put them out there because they love the music, don't get it twisted, but they put them out there to be big, and they made their mixes perfect and they got big off the back of that.
Yeah.
But my mixes are literally, so I've got an hour or an hour and 20 minutes of the tracks that I'm feeling at that particular time that I can have in a mix and I can listen to on the road. That's it.
So the mix I make for my car, you put them out there, yeah. I mean, going back to radio was good for me as well because I used to be a bit bad perfectionist wise. Like I wouldn't put a mix out, like if there was just the slightest thing. So on radio, you're gonna make errors, you're gonna, and you got to do it live. Some clubs you go there and there's no monitor, or there are monitors and you're just not mixing well. There's different things that can happen. But I got to a stage where I was quite content in making mixes and getting a bit comfortable, which is good. Where before it would just be for my car, so I'd be mixing a lot of stuff that you put out, But I think it's good to do that and just be yourself, and it shows that you're playing live as well, and things like that happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's one of them things where if it won't happen nowadays because studios are different, equipment's different. But back in them days, if you thought you were the bollocks and you went to some dingy shithole crack den somewhere and you're having to do a pirate radio show, and you would realize that you very quickly you would be humbled because you would realize like, oh, I'm going to struggle to play this set. But the best of us, we could go into these crap places, even if like the mixer was shoddy or whatever, we could work around it, or we knew the little things that we could do that would make that set sound crystal anyway. It's a lost art form in my opinion.
It's you can be put in the deep end in a lot of places. I mean, DJing in a club is a different experience to playing indoors as well, because you've got no disturbances, no different sounds. And if you go to a club and there's no monitor, a lot of people say, well, what does that mean there's no monitor? It's like literally I'm like playing in a room of echoes because the speakers are facing out, or you're only playing with the speakers that are on the dance floor. And that still happens to this day. And there's nothing worse when you're really looking forward to a booking and you get there and either one deck's not working, or it's not queuing, or there's no monitors. Is probably the worst one. But I mean, you always hit with like obstacles. So you go to a club and there might be that, or you get some clubs now that are great, their sound systems are just, you can't wait to play at that club. But some of the pirate stations that yourself and probably I've had to go, where you've been brought in the back exit up the metal stairs into this kind of mad room. Yeah, we've all been through it in mad estates over the years. But you can be humbled because you don't know what you're going to come up against then.
And on the same subject, finally, favorite club in London to play in?
Oh geez, favorite club in London. Do you know what? I'd probably say more than one at the minute, just for because they both come into my mind. But then again, there's three because I'm looking forward to, because I've mentioned UKG Brunch at Ministry. I'm really looking forward to that coming out because Ministry is like worldwide known and it's just a great club to play at. But one being Studio 338, just for the atmosphere and the kind of the feeling you get there. Studio 338, I've had a good set there for an event called Solstice. That's a good event that I'll be at soon as well. But I also like the Steelyard because we're so regular there with the brunch. It's just a really nice venue. So I like that at the moment, but there'd be a lot to mention. Back in the day, probably Gas Club, Coliseum. I mean, you had your Bagleys and stuff, but I weren't there as regular as I was at Coliseum and Gas. But Coliseum, Gas, I think Bagleys, Camden Palace, them kind of places were like, when I played at Camden Palace, it was just like, just one off the tick list. You're like, that's just an amazing thing. But at the moment, I'd say I like Studio 338, the Steelyard, Ministry of Sound. I'm looking forward to coming up as well. They're top of my head. I might have missed some. Just like when you said 2012 going forward, I bet I'll come off here and go, oh my God, I was doing that at that point. Do you know what I mean? But I think now in them years, I started just making mixes with a few new kind of stuff and just trying to stay not relevant, but show people that I'm playing new stuff as well, because you end up on the radio and just going through an old school set. So I think I just started doing CDs around them years. But going to the clubs, I'd say them ones.
So mate, it's been a pleasure having you on. In terms of where people can catch you, obviously, you spoke about the UKG brunch and the supper and obviously Solstice as well. But to keep up to date with where you're at, what's the best way people can?
Yeah, so my Instagram. I mean, I'm still on Facebook. I still post things on Facebook, but I think Instagram's the kind of the go-to now. I always get a bit of stick because he said your Instagram page is just like flyers. That's all you got. Add a bit of your own life. And I'm not great on social media, to be honest. I'm a little bit quiet and do my own thing. But Instagram will be my main one. So I remember I went on a radio show actually, and the guy was like, "What's your Instagram?" And he said, "Are you checking your phone for it?" And I was like, "I am. I think it's spin_E_B."
I'll put the link in the description on the video and in the.
It's going to help me out on that one because I'm shocking. So I should be a little bit more active on there. But I think like coming from the years we're talking about where we were just on pirate and doing that thing, to have to be an Instagram or a social media kind of write up stuff, I'm not great at it. I'm not good at it. I'll always put up little pictures of my kids and family and stuff like that, and now and then, which is a weird one because obviously I've got my Spinny Bee account, but that's kind of private stuff. But I've got a lot of friends and I wouldn't call them fans, but people that have followed me through the years,
Yeah.
still do. So they're all on that account. So yeah, I had a lot on there, but my Instagram would be, I had all my flyers on there. Check my stories out as well. You know, I always kind of post my mixes up on there from my SoundCloud, which I'm going to try and add a bit more to again. So I've done some USBs like just before lockdown, 3 different USBs, like a vocal garage one, classic garage, and an old school garage. And I've just added their mixes onto my SoundCloud not that long ago. So I'm going to be working on volume 2 very soon, actually. Had a bit of an error with my iTunes. It just cleared all my playlists. So everything that was thrown in to go onto volume 2 has cleared. So like 100. So I've got the tracks. Lucky enough in the folder, but the playlists are where I was kind of going to for it, which messed up things for DJing and stuff, but also for the mixes. So more will be coming on there. I'm going to try and post some more live stuff as well, some live recordings of which are things that, you know, until you're hit with things like the COVID situation, then you're like, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. And like I said, because I'm not great online, I have done the interview with you, Jay, because I, you know, something I've wanted to do, but I'm terrible. I hate interviews. I hate talking. I've done a little bit on the Freeze one. You know, I know you had Hypes on here as well, and he was on that one. He will definitely be winding me up when he sees this one, because he's always on the one, because he knows how I am, how uncomfortable I am with it. But no, it's something that when COVID happened, I was like, I need to do a bit more live stuff, some more live shows, or even, you know, live feeds. And we should have recorded more content. You know, I wish I recorded more content of my club sets that I could have used throughout lockdown. But yeah, you know, it's kind of, until you hit with these things, you kind of then get a kick up the bum to have to do it.
Never too late to change and progress, mate, at all.
That's it. So Instagram will be the main one, mate, to see me where I'm at. But yeah, the brunches are the main ones coming up now going forward. We had Leeds the week before last, Birmingham last week, wicked events, because, you know, it's like going up north back in the day, you know, because things have changed a lot. So it's like, wasn't sure how the sound would be. You do play at some events now and it could be a bit more the baseline kind of sound. They might not know as much UK garage, but they were really, really up for it. So yeah, that was really good, really fun. November was a good month. December, the UKG brunches, and then I think from January forwards, look out for events like Garage Supper Club. That's a really good event. They're ones that I would recommend that I tell my friends to come to, like the brunch, Garage Supper Club. Solstice is a great event as well. And loads more, obviously, loads more. So yeah, on my Instagram, and I'll keep it posted on there.
And I'll add the link into the audio.
Definitely do, in case I got it wrong.
If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, just look in the description. If you're listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, just click the link down there below, and I'll put it all in there. Mate, thank you very much for the time today. And we didn't get disturbed by any delivery men, thank God, because we're recording during the daytime. But I think if anyone did hear some clanging and banging, it's my neighbours being, you know, insensitive pricks. How dare you do things in the daytime?
It's not my mix on in the background.
Certain other DJs mixing, but season 2, episode number 4 of the Over the Hill podcast with Spinny B. Don't forget to follow, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff wherever you're listening, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. We're on Google, we're on TuneIn, we're bloody everywhere. So I think we're even on apps that I don't even know about, because I keep getting all these random statistics. If you were played at this place and this place, and I'm like, I don't even know what that app is. So but all the big ones, and, you know, the main ones, Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Thank you everyone for the support. Thank you, Spinny B, for jumping on the show today. And we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Thanks, Jay.